has worked. We have with us Michelle Bambawale and Deepti Chawla. Michelle is a freelance education consultant and writer who holds a master's in education degree in curriculum pedagogy and assessment from the Institute of Education, London, UK. As a consultant for the British Council, she has participated in various research, training, and evaluation projects related to teacher education. She co-authored a case study titled Teacher Evaluation in India, Issues and Practices. In November 2023, she conducted a webinar on 3 ways to engage with climate action in the language classroom. Both the case study and the webinar recording are available for download on the British Council website and the Teaching English Asia Facebook page. Additionally, Michelle is a published author. Her first book, Becoming Goan, a contemporary coming home story, was released by Penguin Random House India in December 2023. The book addresses her concerns about the destruction of Goa's rich biodiversity. As a lifelong learner, Michelle is committed to finding ways to promote climate action. Our co-speaker for today is Deepti Chawla, who is an experienced English language teacher and curriculum developer. Currently serving at the Delhi Board of School Education, she plays a crucial role in designing English curriculum and content and leading workshops for both educators and students. Throughout her tenure in the educational sector, she has held various positions, including TGT English teacher, mentor teacher, and guest faculty at Delhi University, highlighting her commitment to fostering educational excellence. With an impressive academic background and advanced degrees and certifications in TESOL and gender studies, Deepti has collaborated with prestigious institutions such as NCERT, SCERT, and the University of Delhi. Honored with a Fulbright grant, her contributions to teaching and her published research in academic journals emphasize her dedication and impact in the education field. In 2023, she received the prestigious scholarship from the British Council, as a part of which she's pursuing her MSc TESOL degree from the University of Stirling, Scotland. Over to you, Michelle and Deepti.
Thank you so much, Priya. Deepti and I are very excited to talk about this very important issue we are all facing. Our workshop this evening is called 4 Techniques to Bring Climate Action to Your Language Classroom. We will go over the learning outcomes first. Deepti, if you can read the first one.
For today's webinar is understand and incorporate key climate action terminology into language teaching.
The second one is apply 4 actionable techniques that integrate climate themes into language lessons.
And the third one is develop sustainability and environmental awareness in your language learners.
Okay, so first we need to think about why is it important to discuss the climate crisis in our language classrooms. If you could type why you think it's important in the chat box, this is to just get us to think about why we need to talk about the climate crisis even in language education. Deepti, if we get any answers in the chat box, I will look at some ideas of important speakers on the topic. So we have Greta Thunberg, who's an environmental activist.
So Michelle, before we read these quotes, we've started to get a couple of answers in the chat box, and the responses are about sensitizing kids better.
Yes, yes, they need to know because they are feeling it, they are experiencing it. It's a very important issue that we need to bring even into language classrooms so that we can teach our reading, writing, speaking, listening skills using climate action and climate education. So what Greta says is adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if your house is on fire, because it is. We also have Dr. Jane Goodall, who's a scientist and environmental activist. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. So it's about what we do and what action we can take. And UNESCO tells us education is critical in helping populations understand and address the impacts of climate change, in encouraging the changes in attitudes and behavior needed to help them address the causes of climate change. So it's very important we think of why it's important and all the different issues that we are facing. Any other comments in the chat box, Deepti?
Uh, None so far. I think we can move on.
We'll go over some climate vocabulary. This is very important for ourselves to know as educators and also for our learners to know, so that as language teachers, we empower them with the right vocabulary about the climate crisis. So again, this is a gap fill activity. The first one has been done for you. If you can type what you think the answer is in the chat box with the number and the word that you think is the answer. So the first one I have is we need to try to minimize our carbon footprint. Our carbon footprint is about our use of fossil fuels, in different ways and how in the energy we consume. So something we need to be mindful about: taking public transport, riding cycles, reducing the use of gas, even how we cook, what we eat, etc. Two is we have moved beyond using the term climate change, as we are now facing a climate dash. So you can type two and whatever you think the answer is in the chat box. Three is by attending this webinar, we are committed to working together to take collective climate dash in our classrooms and communities. This word is in the name of our webinar, so I hope it's easy. Four is as a community, we can work towards using dash energy instead of depending on fossil fuels. It's been a lot of discussion now since the last COP about our dependence on fossil fuels. Number five is in our everyday lives, we can try to use dash practices. And number six, with rising temperatures, natural disasters, and unsustainable practices, many of us suffer from climate dash. I know I suffer from this as well.
We have a few responses, Michelle.
Okay.
So for the second one, we have crisis.
Yes.
For
Third
the fifth
one is
one, we have sustainable. And
yes.
for the last one, I think the last one people did not get yet, but the answer definitely is anxiety.
So we face a lot of climate anxiety, and definitely our students face it because they may not know how to verbalize it because they are feeling the effects of pollution, of floods, of landslides, of so many disasters, unseasonal rain, heat waves. So they feel anxiety and they don't know how to process it. This could be, they get panic attacks, breathlessness, even depression. So it's important to talk about that so that they know they are not alone, and for them to start
Absolutely.
thinking of steps that they take towards climate action. What do you
So,
think about
Michelle,
your students?
because see, I am come from a government school setup, and I also know for a fact that in rural areas and in our schools, especially government schools, what happens is these are the children who are getting affected the most by climate crisis, and often it is observed that they cannot word it what they're feeling, they cannot put it in words, but they're experiencing it, they're getting affected by it, they're distressed, which comes in the form of anger, it comes in different behavioral issues as well, because they cannot put together how they're feeling and why they're feeling something. They are the ones who get the most impacted. So
Yes,
probably
yes.
if we as educators know about this, we'll be able to address these concerns and we'll be more sensitive to our students in the classroom.
Yes, what you say is they feel frustration, they feel rage, they feel many different emotions that they don't know how to process. So it's important as educators that we talk about it in the classroom.
Yeah.
So this was the lead-in that is useful for us, the vocabulary that we need. Now I'm going to the first technique, which is using Realia in the primary classroom. So I'm going to go over this activity. You can be my students. So what is this? If you can type in the chat box what you think it is. Deepti, if you can tell me what you think it is.
Oh, it's a bottle, water
And what
bottle.
color is it?
Uh, so a lot of our participants are also saying it's a green water bottle. So
Yes,
because they
yes,
already saying
yes,
water, so water,
they know that,
green.
yes.
Yes,
Why is it good for me? It's good for me because I am carrying my own water from a safe source.
right.
And I'm not using a plastic water bottle. I'm not wasting water. So that's why it's good for me. Why is it good for the school? Because I'm not using the school's resources. I'm bringing my own water and I'm not using the school's resources. It's also safe because of I'm bringing it from my home. And why is it good for the world? It's because it's a reusable water bottle. I'm not using a plastic water bottle. So that's why it's good, not just for me, it's also good for the world. This is one idea to introduce our students to reduce the dependence on plastic, which is everywhere we have single-use plastic. So to get them to think about something that they use every day. And I know most students bring water bottles, but just a reminder, and the technique is using Realia. I saw this, I did this course online. It's called Climate Action in the Language Education. It's going on with the British Council. I signed up and it's open till March. One point that struck me was they had a quote there that said, when you buy a plastic water bottle, you buy plastic, not water. So it's
True.
something that we must think about. Uh, this,
Also, Michelle, I feel that as an activity, using this kind of realia is very easy for teachers because this is not something that you have to specially arrange. You
yes,
carry a water bottle, so
yes,
it's very low resource, like low cost resource, and immediately available for use.
yes. So the idea is when you use Realia, use things that are readily available. Don't, waste resources and money by buying more things or creating things when we can reuse the resources we have.
Right.
The next
Michelle,
technique,
sorry to
yes,
come in here, but lots of interaction in the chat here as well,
okay.
with many ideas from people saying it's sustainable, many people
Water.
saying that it can be reused, and a lot of interaction on our Facebook page.
Chat box,
People have
yes.
really engaged with that idea.
Thanks. Good to know. Thanks, Priya.
Oh,
Uh,
we already have answers to this exercise here.
Okay. So the second technique we want to talk about is introducing vocabulary. And we now have 5 Rs. I think we were familiar with 3 Rs before, but we now have 5 Rs. Again, I got this from a British Council resource called Action in Language Education. Resources for low resource classrooms. So they have different ideas. Lots of very good ideas. I just picked a few to demonstrate today, but if teachers have time, they can go through them.
Yes.
So should I quickly go to the answers if we're getting
Yes.
lots of,
Lot
oh,
of people have
okay,
responded correctly.
okay. So we have 5 Rs now, which is reduce, reuse, recycle, repair, and refuse. So I think we were used to reduce, reuse, recycle. We saw that a lot. Now we also have repair and refuse. So think of how you're going to introduce the vocabulary. I've been thinking about primary learners, but depending on the language levels of your students, you can give them this vocabulary and think of how they can use it in any level of classroom.
Right.
Again, to reinforce these ideas and for them to understand the meanings, this is another activity that you can do and we'll do online. Again, if you can type in the chat box, which word means to say no to something you are offered? B, which word means to use or buy less of something? C, which word means to mend or fix something? D, which word means to use something again? E, which word means to give something a new or different use? So maybe we can look at the chat
Yes,
box
a
and
lot of
see.
correct answers in the chat box. I must applaud our participants because they've been
Yes,
engaging with
yes, yes.
these
I
questions
can see
and
all C, D,
yes,
reuse, C, repair. Yes,
yes,
C, repair, A, yes. So,
e-recycle. And it's a very good idea to reinforce the vocabulary in a different way than the way it has been introduced. So,
so they understand the
yes,
meaning of the
yes,
words and they can use it themselves.
true.
So I think everybody got it right. A was refuse, say no to something. B was reduce when you buy less. C is mend or fix is repair. Use something again is reuse, which word means to give something a new or different use is recycle. I have an example here again using Realia. This bag is made by with plastic bags. So they've, crocheted plastic bags. Somebody gave it to me. It's a great use of recycling the plastic. Um, Again, this is from the resource I was talking about. I want to go into the meaning and some examples and think of how you can use this as a speaking activity or a writing activity for your classroom and your learners, where they use these words and they know the meaning and then they know how to use it. So reduce is buy less of something. Don't buy a book, borrow it from a library. Don't buy a new toy, swap toys with friends. Reduce our consumption of whatever we can. Reuse is reuse it again. Use two sides of a paper. As teachers and educators, use two sides of, a chart paper or a poster paper. Use an old comic to wrap a present. Again, as teachers, you can use newspaper, to make posters and for science. So you're reusing something. Recycle is to give something a new use. Use an old jar to keep pencils tidy. Use bottle tops to make a game. The bag I showed you is a way of recycling. Some people call it upcycling now. You
Yes,
can get a new product out of something old. A repair is mend something when it breaks. Sew a hole in an old sock. Use tools to mend a broken car. For me, it's my watch. I have a very old watch that I keep repairing because I don't want to buy a new one. Same with the cycle. Refuse is say no to something. Always carry your own shopping bag. Say no to plastic straw. Say no to plastic toothpaste, toothbrush, I mean. Again, on this low resource, there were many good ideas I saw. One was about fast fashion. If you have
mm,
for ourselves and for secondary learners, the impact of fast fashion. Again, for on plastic bottle, they had a whole activity on the life of a plastic bottle, right
mm,
from its creation to the end, and how you use it just for very little while. So lots
yeah.
of good activities. I use the ones for primary, but it's for all levels. Um, and now I'm going to hand over to you, Deepti.
Thanks, Michelle. So you've already looked at two techniques that can be used very well in a primary classroom. Now let's look at a couple of techniques that you can use to address climate action in secondary classrooms. And for that, we're going to take example from our syllabus. We are going to look at one poetry unit from grade 9. It's unit 11, and we're going to discuss how we can go about it. But before we look at the techniques, let's quickly answer a couple of questions in the chat box. What do you generally do after poetry recitation when you do a particular poem in your class? What are the kind of activities, or what is the purpose that you think poetry is meant to be included in the syllabus? Why? What do you do after it? And also, how can we use a literary text to facilitate a mindset that leads us and our students towards climate action? So, these are the two questions. If our participants could respond to these. So, Michelle, Meanwhile, why don't you share your experience? You've been an
So
educator.
typically after a poetry, I mean, first you read the poem and you talk about how to say the poem, and then you go into poetic devices, similes, metaphors, different poetic devices. But I think we have to look beyond that now, especially when we have such a powerful poem like you have here.
Right. Okay. So, I think some of the participants um, say they've responded that they use symbols inherent. So, symbols, by symbols, I am assuming that you mean to say we do a lot of literary analysis,
Yes.
metaphors, and we discuss the message. We do, there's always a message in a poem. So, we do that. Uh, let's quickly look at the poem at hand. It's from grade 9 CBSE NCRT textbook on Killing a Tree by Jaiv Patel. It takes much time to kill a tree. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. It has grown, slowly consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing years of sunlight, air, and water, and out of its leprous hide, sprouting leaves. So hack and chop, but this alone won't do it. Not so much pain will do it. The bleeding bark will heal, and from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs, miniature boughs. What if, unchecked, will expand again to former size? No, the root is to be pulled out. Out of the anchoring earth, it is to be roped, tied, and pulled out, snapped out, or pulled out entirely out from the earth cave, and the strength of the tree exposed. The source, white and wet, the most sensitive, hidden for years inside the earth. Then the matter of scorching and choking, in sun and air, browning, hardening, twisting, withering, and then it is done.
Teach
And
meanings of the words as well, vocabulary words before they teach poetry. And then they talk about creativity in poetry as
yes,
well.
right. So, let's look at some of the tasks that you can do when you use poetry. The first one that we have here is fatafat debate or fast debate. Now, the objective of fatafat debate is to engage children into critical thinking skills, and they are able to address and discuss real world issues from the poem. Now, what is interesting is that excuse me, that the entire class can be involved in this activity. We can divide students. So a typical debate like session is conducted by dividing the class into two groups, and they present their arguments and counter arguments. But in a fast debate, you can divide the entire class into smaller groups of 7 or 11 students. Now, if we have a group of 7 students, let's say, you can have one moderator, and the other 6 students can be divided into further subgroups, 3 each, who can then take on the position of one group will advocate for deforestation, and one group will be against the idea of deforestation for environmental protection. So both these groups can argue and present evidence, use real world examples. If you give them time, it depends. This whole activity can be done in one single period, because typically we have 35 minutes to 45 minutes period. In some schools you have an hour long period as well, but you can typically do this activity in a single period. Even if you want to give them some time to do some research in the classroom or in the library for 10-15 minutes, and you can actually tie up with the librarian and conduct this session in the library itself, because that's where the resources are and that's where the entire activity happens. So the connect between your text, the research, the other books, and library, sort of it all comes together, right? Or you can do it in your class. But if you intend to do it in the class, I think as teachers it will be important for us to give them some pre vocab, primarily to help them understand the nuances of how to debate, how to argue, right? So words like although, however, and I think my colleague or my friend here, something like that. So provide them with some basic vocab which they can use for argumentative speech, and then they can do a wonderful debate in the classroom. Another important thing that I would like to mention here is it is fast debate and it's happening in the class in smaller groups. So as a teacher, you don't need to bring in any extra resource. All you have to do is just walk around the class and keep on facilitating so that the students stay on track. And there may be couple of issues resulting from the fact that some students might use their home language, which is completely okay, because when we are aiming at developing spoken skills and developing argumentative spoken skills, I think the primary purpose is that they should be able to communicate well. The idea is not to check their accuracy but to bring climate action into their daily conversations. They are able to voice their opinions and provide support to their opinions. So that's the most important thing. So that's one activity that you can do after a poetry session in using poetry in your classrooms. We Let's take a look at another activity which is
One question,
yes.
Deepti. What about
Yes, Michelle, what was your question? Sorry, I did not
I
hear
said in
your
a
first.
large classroom, what will happen if I'm in a large classroom?
I don't think it would be a problem, because whether you have a group of say 15, 20 students or a group of 60, you can easily manage that. It may take like a couple of times for you to establish those rules, but once you do that, in smaller groups, children have to manage the debate on your own. You don't need to do micromanagement. It's about letting them express, and it's better
Yes,
to do it with the entire class because it gives an opportunity for all the students to talk
yes,
together. And it's not about like picking those chosen few who
yes,
generally
yes,
provide us the correct answers.
yes, yes.
So it's more
So
about peer
everybody
learning as well.
develops their speaking
Yes.
skills.
So they
Nice.
grow. So the second task is eco drama circle, again related to our poem. Now this the purpose of doing eco drama circle is to develop empathy and understanding different perspectives, not just on deforestation and climate action, but also about themselves if they were that person. And it uses theater in education, primarily because a lot of our students like to do something to learn, and they always are excited to do something different more than a discussion or a writing task. So it sort of provides them that opportunity to explore a different side, a different part of their own personalities. And for this, you need to divide the entire class into groups of four, and each person will be assigned a role of a tree, forest animal, lumberjack, and an environmental activist. So we assign them these roles because these are the ones which typically come into that poem. And
True,
as the
true.
poem changes, you can have different roles, or a story for that matter. It can be done with a story as well. Once you've divided this, they create a scene where these characters discuss the impact of deforestation, such as the tree expressing loss, and the birds or the animals, if they're talking, if they are animal or bird, they expressing their concern that they no home for staying.
True,
So
true.
their homes are gone, right? And an activist advocating for conservation, whereas a lumberjack who fells tree will argue that it's my livelihood, it's how I feed my family. So it's not that black and white, these are gray areas, so students get an opportunity to discuss all of that. um so
How
that's
is it
and it's
different from a role play, Deepti, this
yes.
eco drama
So
circle?
it's very different from a role play because in a role play we generally assign very very specific roles, created roles, and the scenarios are predefined. You're supposed to act like a particular character. You have certain situations which are predefined, predetermined. There is no role of you improvising anything. It's a fixed sort of parameters, whereas in a drama circle, participants create a story together. You do not provide them a prerequisite in terms of, okay, this is the scene that you have to enact, like you are in a classroom, or this is the story that you need to enact out. It's more about a improvised sort of a presentation of different point of views and perspectives, and it sort of helps them explore different themes, social and environmental issues, brings out their creativity, because they're creating that scene on the go. It's very organic compared to a role
Yeah,
play which
yeah,
needs to be rehearsed
yeah.
in that
So
sense.
we are doing
So
also our skills, we are doing
yes,
speaking, but also communication, critical thinking, creativity, so many of our
yes,
21st century skills. Okay.
right, yes. And because it's sort of open ended, so gives them a lot of opportunity to express themselves and their point of view, which is very, very important. And these sort of tasks helps us to create and integrate, now create opportunities for students to discuss, express opinions, analyze climate related issues, and also integrate climate crisis discussions into everyday conversations. Once these issues become part of everyday conversations, I think half of our problem is solved, because then children
All
become
the
more
time you're
aware.
thinking about it.
Yes, a lot of children are suffering from climate crisis every day, pollution, rising pollution levels,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
schools are closed down because of pollution, floodings, and the different types of issues that they're dealing with, right? Okay, so let's quickly move on to our last technique for the day, which is persuasive
Sorry,
writing.
Deepti. Can I just come in
Yes,
here? I
sure.
just like to acknowledge some very interesting responses we've
Yeah.
received on Facebook as well. People are saying that you've shared great ideas about using drama or poetry. They're saying that the idea on using Fatafat debate is excellent. Monica Kaushik says eco drama circle and role play is very different. And on the same lines, Aditi in the Zoom chat also first suggested a role play, but after your
Yes,
explanation, she's got the difference about between the
yes.
two.
Right, right, great. Okay,
Thanks. Yeah.
so again, we should applaud our participants, because
Yes,
they make
thank you for
all the effort
engaging.
worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yes. And so now we would like you to respond to what is persuasive writing and why it is important. If we could have quick responses to that. Why do you think, what is persuasive writing and why do you think it is important?
I think we use it all the time when we write letters, or, we see it all the
Absolutely.
time in ads and in social media and in the
True.
newspapers and in
I
uh,
think we are getting responses also. Some
it
Aditi
inspires
says it
others. Yes, yes.
inspires. Okay, yes, persuasive writing
Yes,
inspires
Alok says it inspires action,
action.
writing for a purpose. Yes, the
Yes,
main thing we're discussing is how it's creative. Saika says it's creative.
it's it's creative. It's for a purpose. It's perspective
Kiran
sharing.
says perspective sharing. Yes.
So most of your responses are correct. Persuasive writing typically is a form of communication. It is specifically designed to convince others to adopt a particular point of view, right? For anyone to believe in your idea, they need to get convinced, and that's what persuasive writing is for. It is widely used, as you can see on the screen, in letters, advertisements, different campaigns, essays, and they definitely lead to climate, they not just climate action but any action for that matter. And persuasive writing influences a lot of policies as well. Now if you look at today, we use a lot of social media to persuade others, right? So yes, somebody said selling an idea for a startup is also persuasive, but
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
a lot of energy goes into persuading others. It's not easy for someone else to believe in what you think is important, and persuasive writing is exactly there to address that concern. And we do persuasive writing as part of our syllabus. Over here, we are going to quickly look at persuasive letter writing, because it's part of CBSE syllabus for grade 10 and grade 12. Uh, and they expect children to write formal letters. So let's quickly take a look at what is included if we are looking at climate action, and we connect this with the poem that we have just read. So the introduction could be on the urgency of climate action. Then we have the body. We all are familiar with the format. I'm just giving you an example of how to link it with the poem and climate action. It proposes climate initiative with supporting evidence. logical arguments, emotional appeals, and evidence. Evidence is extremely important because our students define and describe, whereas the critical element of providing evidence generally goes missing when we're dealing with formal writing and persuasive letters. So this is very important when we present evidence. And a conclusion, which is a clear call to action for the recipient, right? After we do this, once the students have written their letters, we must give them for peer review. And why peer review is important is because when they read each other's letter, they will be able to judge whether they are getting influenced by those letters. So the peers become their first audience in a way, and can give them exact feedback on how well the argument has been framed and whether it is able to convince them for a particular form of action or not. Because we expect some form of action after the letter, it is important that we provide them with that audience which will not be as judgmental for them, and they won't be afraid or hesitant to share that piece of writing. And peer feedback works wonders because it's easy for me to take feedback from a peer rather than
Yes.
a senior or a teacher. That helps. And once our peer review is done, we have written the letter, wonderful, in class. But how do we go to climate action from letter writing? We can submit these letters. You can ask your students to submit the letter to principal, local official, or community leader, and according to the subject matter of the letter they're writing. Apart from that, you can help them write letters to invite dialogues from different environmental activists or leaders or officials who can help discuss possible steps. So if it's a rural area, you can invite local farmers who have been practicing sustainable farming, and
Yes.
they can deliver a lecture, and it could be an invitation letter also. So persuade them to come and discuss organic farming or sustainable farming techniques. So that's very important, that students need to do something after they have written the letter. And it could, if they're writing to a principal, they could, for example, write a letter to have a green week, eco initiatives. They can organize eco initiatives. When I say organizing eco initiatives, if the letter is for a principal, the principal sort of then can organize a green week. A green week could be, say, having one day for no garbage day, one day for no food wastage day. Our students, I mean, we as teachers, all of you who've been teachers at any point of time, you know that a lot of food is wasted in schools, irrespective of whether it's a private school or a government school. So that another day could be green awareness, where teachers or students talk about their experiences. One could be plantation week in the school. A few students can be involved. You need not even involve the entire school for that matter. One could be a talk show day in the assembly. So these are different ways that it can happen in school. So this is how we go from letter writing to concrete action. And if we reflect on all the three on all the activities that we've done so far, these activities actually create opportunities, as discussed earlier as well. They create opportunities for students to discuss, express opinions, analyze climate related issues. They help us integrate climate crisis discussions into everyday conversations. So for example, in eco drama circle, climate crisis will automatically come into play, because it's not just about what's happening due to deforestation, but it will impact livelihood. That also is part of climate crisis. People going out of livelihood, people not having enough space, that ways. And then it also helps students, it that writing can be used as a powerful tool for driving social impact and advocate for environmental sustainability. So once children realize the power of writing, for example, in driving social impact, and they get a grasp of what persuasive writing is and can do, so whether it's Twitter, Facebook, they'll also become more sensitive and sensible about using it. Because these are the platforms which are actually now getting used to um, not just persuade but sort of drive mob
Social
mentality.
change. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So these are the two techniques, or rather a couple of more than two techniques that can be easily integrated with secondary class
Yes, they can
syllabus.
use it for
Yes,
their school principal, their school authorities, also at their home, in their communities where they live. They
yes,
can talk to the people in their neighborhood, in their societies, in their colonies, and try to
yes,
mobilize people to take collective climate action
absolutely.
in
Yes,
small
Deepti,
ways, whatever they decide.
lots of,
yes,
again, lots of, just wanted to acknowledge comments in the chat. Arindam says that this activity surely goes up in the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So
Yes,
mm,
what you're
yes,
doing
yes.
here, when we
yes,
use Bloom's taxonomy,
yes,
it does go up there.
yes,
Meena
right,
says students can get involved in advocacy
yes,
through persuasive
Yes,
writing.
yes,
yes.
Our audience
yes,
in the Facebook Live are also applauding all the activities and they're finding them really useful. They're appreciating the awareness being created through this and talking about the practical aspects of all of this. So thank
mm,
you.
Thanks, Priya. So the last activity we have after our 4 techniques is for all of us to take a green pledge. So we put the link in the chat box. It is to type on a Padlet how you personally are going to use the 5 Rs that we learned. And again, we can do this as teachers, but we can also do it in our classroom. It's a tie-up to the vocabulary that we did earlier. You can do it at any level. Personally, this is what I have decided to do. I refuse to take plastic bags and straws. I will reduce my buying of processed and canned foods because it's not good for me and there's a lot of packaging. I will recycle old jars and bottles. I will repair my old shoes and my old watches, and I will reuse my shopping bags. So I'm going to now, if you can click the Padlet link. Can you see the Padlet now, Deepti?
yes, I can.
So we have, if you can
There are
type
people
here on this
typing.
Padlet, also in the chat box.
Yes, if anyone has an issue with the Padlet, you can type in the chat
You,
box.
And you can
so we
always
all
scan the
take a
QR
pledge.
code as well.
Yes, yes.
Michelle, we can't see the Padlet on your screen. And I don't know if it's just me or
Can you
No,
see
no,
it
maybe it's
now?
no,
my internet. We
no.
can't see it on your screen yet. You'll need to share your entire screen probably, or
Okay,
just the
let me
Padlet.
try
Or
again. Can you see it now?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. So my green pledge is here. Priya's is also here. I will reuse my clothes. I will reduce online shopping. That is a great temptation because it's very easy to do. You can get a lot of stuff. It comes with a lot of packaging. So it's something that we all have can think about. I will refuse to accept anything that has plastic packaging. I will repair my habits and be more climate conscious. I will recycle all the newspaper and create paper bags. That's a very good idea because they're very useful. You can use it for shopping, for gifting. Um,
we have some ideas in the chat.
I use a
Uh,
bamboo toothbrush. Good
yeah,
job, Saika. So do I. Sorry. Can you still see my screen?
yes, we can. We can.
Okay, okay.
Pankaj is saying he's unable to do it, but Pankaj, maybe you can for now share your ideas here, your pledge
If you
here in
can
the
type
chat.
in the chat box, yes.
Maybe you're facing some tech issues because some people are able to access it. Rindam says he refrains from using plastic cups but uses earthenware, which is great.
Shubham says, I reduce my usage of private transport for small distance in order to bring the small climate change. Very good idea. Adventurous Jellyfish says, I reuse my pens by buying refills. Great. I reduce plastic by carrying my own bag. I use metal bottles. I repair all my old articles till they are completely irreplaceable. I will compost kitchen waste. Very good. I will refuse plastic bags. I pledge to segregate the household trash. In many places now, they've stopped collecting, unless you separate your wet and dry garbage, they don't accept it, which is very good. Kiran's green pledges, I will follow 5 Rs. I will try to reduce plastic. I will reuse papers. I will try to create my own plastic bag.
A lot of
Something that's
interesting pledges.
very
We have
bad for the environment are balloons, which we don't realize.
very
Yes.
true, very
So
true.
when she said, for celebrations, we use a lot of balloons, and there are some horrible videos where, you see the effects of
True.
marine life, especially struggling. So
Michelle, many responses on Facebook as well. People saying they'll avoid plastic pots for plants or cups and mugs and
yes, yes,
glasses.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, they've pledged to use paper bags. So Jacqueline says she'll use paper bags. Monica says avoiding plastic pots for plants. Trying to minimize single-use plastic and will
Yes,
use
that's very
only
important.
bottles, metal bottles.
Old material to decorate the idea, that's a good idea. I will repair my essentials wherever possible.
I like
These
Saika's
eco-friendly
idea.
ways.
Saika says on a very general level, she will go minimal. She'll take the minimalistic approach for everything in life.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, yes. I will refuse to carry plastic bags. I will reduce the usage of internet and printer. I will refuse to buy things that are wrapped in plastic. I will repair and alter my clothes. I will compost kitchen waste. Um,
Thank you. Maybe we can move back to the
Yes.
presentation. This link will be
sure.
here. I don't think
It'll
Michelle
be
plans to.
available. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be available. Going back
Right.
to share the presentation now. Um,
We
so
can see the
those
presentation.
Yes. So just to recap, the 4 techniques that we discussed today during our session that we hope will help you to bring climate action to your language classroom. The first one that I looked at, climate vocabulary, one was for us, and the other was the 5 Rs that we again reused to take a green pledge that you can use in your classroom. Using Realia was using the water bottle and a bag. And Deepti, your 2 techniques.
Poetry for climate action, which included Fatafat debate and eco drama circle. And the last one was persuasive letter writing towards climate action. And all these activities that we've discussed, there were different sub activities involved in these.
Within them.
So you could use them as separate activities as well. And what is very important is that most of these activities, you do not need any special resources and can be quickly done in any classroom, whether it's a huge strength classroom or a smaller strength classroom. So they're manageable. Yes, with some in a large classroom it will take more effort, but it is manageable.
Yes, yes. So that's it. These were the resources. I think we posted the links in the chat box. I
Yes.
referred to these two. One was a resource, the other is an online course which you can sign up for. Uh, and now questions. I will stop sharing my screen.
Yes. So
Thank you, Michelle and Deepti. Very, very engaging session. And I think all the participants in the chat agree and echo my sentiments on this, that it was very useful, practical, and very engaging. And that is what the feedback is on the Facebook Live comment section as well. Saika had a question
yes,
already in
so
the
I
chat.
have seen the
Yes.
question. I would like to respond to it. Good
Or
question.
poem
So
doesn't
usually
relate with climate action.
climate
What if it
action.
doesn't
So
relate with climate action?
usually when you look at your syllabus, you will have in every grade you will have a poem or a story, or in your reader a story that does relate to climate action. Secondly, I expect and I would like to request using this platform that teachers should use some other stories or some other poetries beyond their classroom to discuss certain important issues. So in case if you do not have one, you can bring in a poem or a story which sort of addresses these issues. And lastly, even if the story doesn't directly relate with the theme, so for example, I'll use an example here. Again, grade 7 NCRT textbook, main textbook. So there's a story about a bicycle repair, all right, which is a very funny story about a new bicycle and someone wanting to be friends, and trying to repair a all right cycle, and it ends up spoiling that cycle. Basically, it's a humorous tale. But there are constantly discussions on repair, on repairing this bicycle. And those, when you're discussing, say for example, vocabulary, why is it important to repair, that gives you an entry point to sort of start a small discussion maybe, or do a short activity on climate action. The fact that somebody is going to repair something is a climate action in itself, right? So you can use opportunities like these, which do not directly relate with climate action but can bring in that opportunity. It's about harnessing those opportunities as well. So the different ways of doing it.
Also looking for cross-curricular links with other subjects and trying to integrate ideas so that we're thinking about it all the time. Because now, as we mentioned, it is an emergency and we really need our learners to be motivated because it is their future that we are concerned about. So
True.
looking for opportunities in every way that we can in and out of the classroom.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't think we have any more questions.
Question.
Saika had a question on the recording of this session being made available. Yes, like I said at the beginning, we will be uploading a recording of this session to our YouTube playlist. I'll share the link to that in the chat shortly. And the PDF version of this presentation will also be made available on our website.
We
I'll
have an
share the link to
interesting
the
comment.
website.
Sorry, Priya,
Yes,
I'm
no
cutting in.
problem.
We have an interesting response in the chat box by Pankaj, who is saying that we can also
Hashtag.
highlight our culture of calling rivers and land our mothers, etc., as part of maybe social science class. I think it sort of comes to that at the end of the day, because
Yes,
we do
yes,
it. So it provides a great opportunity to bring in culture as well. And
yes,
if climate action can become part of our culture, why not?
yes,
Also, if
yes,
you see, I wanted to mention that all these activities that we've discussed today can be directly linked to competency based teaching learning practices that NEP envisages, and
yes,
our NCF sort of highlights. So, when we do these activities, it's not just about bringing climate action, but we are actually building competences for our students to deal with a world which is facing so many crises at so many levels, right?
yes, yes,
So when we get stuck as what is competency based teaching learning, and all this new, so whatever many of us have been doing is part of competency based learning. We just need to be more aware of what we are doing, and maybe more reflective.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle and Deepti, once again for a great session on a very pertinent topic. Thank you, Manisha and Atul, for the signing. And thank you all the audiences for engaging so well with our session. We have pasted the link to the feedback form in the chat. May I request Mahua to please stop recording the session?
Thank you, everybody, for